Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Strong and the Geek Halloween Spooktacular!
Ooh! That sounds pretty spooky.
Halloween! I'm your host, Josh Ramirez, and with me is my special guest co-host, not Count Dracula.
Not Blair.
Not
Blair,
not a vampire, suck your blood.
Blah, blah, blah.
We have a fantastic Halloween show for you this evening, where we'll be discussing all things strong, geek, nerd, culture, comic books, movies, TV, all that sort of stuff.
And spookiness.
And spooky, Count Dracula. I should have said you're not Count Dracula.
Frankenboo.
Frankenberry. But first things first, seeing as if you have been an avid listener of the show, you've probably remembered that on holidays we tend to try and mix things up from our normal opening to the show, and instead have a little game of sorts.
Yeah.
A game of thrones, as some would say.
No one would say that.
Nobody would say
that.
So, my game is more so just not really a game as opposed to just kind of a personal sharing, but I thought, why don't we let them know what we are afraid of, what spooks us out.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Or maybe tell a funny anecdote of something that we were spooked out about.
Okay. Would you like to start?
No, you can go first.
Okay. So, as I have mentioned before, in my day job, I'm a truck driver, and that is pertinent to this particular story. So, I had a dream one time.
Okay, Martin.
Wow. Yes, same story.
That's not racist, right? I think that's just like celebrity make fun of ist.
Can you imagine if he would have taken the stage and been like, I had a dream one time?
Yeah. That end of speech. All right, go ahead.
Now, I had this dream one time that was very spooky, where I was like in this weird little Eastern European village, and I don't know why I was there, but the villagers were like, you need to help us with this thing that's by this lake. And I was like, why am I going to help you with this thing? They're like, you're the only one, because movies tell us that we're all the only one that can do something.
Right.
So they lead me down through this forest. It's like twilight, the time of day, not the movie.
Gotcha.
And it's like foggy out, so it's very spooky already. And we're walking along this like natural rock wall, like part of a cliff. And we round it, and they're like, okay, now on the other side of this, you're going to see the lake, and there's a little inlet. Just peer around, but be very quiet, because she's sitting there. And I was like, I don't know what that means at all. So I peered around the corner, and sure enough, there was this really lanky, tall, like, figure. It looked kind of like the girl from The Ring. She was wearing kind of like a burlap sack for a dress.
Oh, no.
You couldn't see her face because it was covered by this long black hair. But the dimensions of her body, I can still make it out. Because they were extremely thin, but like way longer than a regular human's, like arms and legs. And the fingers on her hands like stretched out like 9 or 10 inches into points. Like little daggers.
Okay.
But I couldn't see her face until I gasped at the sight of her. And then her head slowly cocked to the side. And the hair, like, kind of parted, and she had no face.
Oh, man.
But then, and this is the freakiest part, like, out of her no face, eyes just, like, opened up out of, like, the skin pulled back,
right.
And it was just these red eyes, and then I just shot awake. Now, the reason that pretends to me being a truck driver is that since then, every time I'm hooking up at a terminal...
With a girl?
Yeah, no, every time I'm hooking up with a girl, she turns into that monster.
Her eyes turn red.
No, when I'm hooking my set together,
right.
A lot of times I'll be at a terminal where there's nobody there. I'll
right.
be the only one, especially on the weekends. It'll just be closed. So I'm already kind of secluded, and usually the lights are all off. So the only lights are the blinking red lights from my truck.
Oh.
So as I'm winding up my landing gear or whatever, I keep seeing my own shadow cast in a blinking red light. I always see her.
Oh,
she is always like lurking behind
right.
a corner. And I'm embarrassed to say it, I run back to my cab when I'm done lining up the landing gear. I slam the door closed, and then I just sit for a second. I'm like, well, no one's gonna get me, and then I can drive.
Have you ever noticed, like, I don't know why this is, and maybe it's just me, but, like, if you are, like, a little creeped out, that, like, turning on a TV or something, like, makes you feel less creeped out?
Yeah, I
Like,
guess.
maybe it's because you're hearing other people's voices
Yeah,
that
you get this
calms
sense
you.
like you're not alone.
It's just like, think about that. If there was really a serial killer or a demon or something, they wouldn't give a shit that you turned the TV on, like, at all.
Well, inside,
like, oh, the Seinfeld's on. Never mind, I'm not gonna murder you.
Well, like inside the truck, I feel like safer because I know the dimensions.
Right.
Whereas outside, I think I'm less claustrophobic than I am. What's the opposite of claustrophobia? Agoraphobia?
Well, sort of, but you can, you
Fear
can,
of like open spaces.
Yeah, agoraphobia. There's more to it than that, but you can use that as for that.
So like when I'm outside, I can't deal with it because it could come from anywhere. Inside the truck, I'm safe because it's a small space.
Yeah, and I guess that goes along with like when kids like go under their blankets and think they're safe. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, no, you're gonna still get stabbed.
Now, funny secondary side note to deal with. Also, me being in the truck and this making the inside the truck a less safe space. So I was driving one night when I was still relatively new, and a traffic accident happened right in front of me. A car crashed less than a football field in front of me. Now, at the time, I was already like zooming, so by the time I passed right by it, I was calling 911 to let them know, hey, this car just went off the road and rolled over. And they were like, did you stop? Is the person okay? I said, no, I'm in a truck and I'm still driving. I just wanted to give you guys a call and let you know to go to this exact spot and send an ambulance because someone might be hurt. The car's literally upside down right now. So then I called my friend Billy, who's another driver, and I explained the situation. And he was like, dude, you didn't stop? Like, what if that person is, like, hurt? And I was like, don't do that, man. You know that there's nothing I could really do. I'm not a trained paramedic. And he's like, dude, if that person died, the first thing their soul saw as it left their body was you passing and not stopping. You're haunted, man. You're haunted for sure. So I was like, oh, fuck you. Whatever. So we end up talking for a little bit longer. We hang up the phone. We were going to the same destination, but he was about 10 minutes ahead of me. So he got there first. As I'm pulling into the gate, I see him. I wave. I get my truck stopped, and then he calls me. I answer the phone. He goes, hey, dude, who's in the truck with you? I was like, what? He goes, that guy sitting in the seat next to you. Who is that? And I was like, what? And of course, he was joking. But he had told me I was haunted, and the first thing he saw that said was, who's that with you? Ever since then, every now and again, I'll look over into the passenger seat, and I'll catch my own reflection in the other mirror, or the window, and I'll be like, oh, light's coming on inside the truck. There's no ghosts in here.
So for me, I think my story takes us back to the 8th grade, a more awkward time. Once a friend and I, we were at his house. He lived near us, so I was walking distance. So I was at his house, and it was pretty late, and we were the only ones home. And we were playing around with like audio recording software, sort of like what we use, for the show. And we were messing with like the frequencies and the pitches and stuff. And what we were doing is we were like trying to record if we could like hear his cats like in the other room like with it.
Oh yeah, I remember.
If we turned the TV on.
You and your friend the giant.
Yeah,
right?
but anyway, well, yeah, you don't have to say people's names, but
like anyone knows Chad the Giant.
It doesn't matter. Anyway,
if he was on our podcast, that would totally be his podcast name.
Right. Anyway, well, we were fooling around with it, and what happened was that we changed one of the pitches or frequencies or something, so that way when we were talking, like we would be like talking, and you'd play it back and you couldn't hear us talking because like how the change in frequency or whatever.
Okay.
And so we recorded that kind of just like open air of that for a little bit, trying to see if we could like hear the cat like down the other room or something. And when we played it back, I swear to God, you could hear like subtle like children's voices. It was terrifying. I was like, turn it off, dude. Turn that off. And then I remember I was like, I'm gonna go home. This is messed up. So I was walking home, and on the walk home, there's one or two street lights like in between our houses or so. Probably a couple more. But I remember like for some reason all the street lights being out. The electricity in the neighborhood was fine, but the street lights were out except one that was like flickering.
Oh,
and I was like, what the hell is going on?
You were in a horror movie.
And I definitely sprinted. I sprinted the rest of the way.
I don't blame you. That is terrifying.
And to this day, years and years later, I still am like, what the hell was that? Like, I bet you it was probably just like a cricket sounded like a kid, but it sounded like a little kid going like, na, 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 na,
I also had an interesting thing kind of like that happen once.
Another thing?
Yeah, another thing. When
That's 3 things for you, by the way.
I know. Well, tell more stories, bro. No, when my wife and I had our first child, we used a baby monitor, and baby monitors can pick up frequencies from other baby monitors, which I had no idea about. So we're in our apartment, and we hear crying, but it was like really faint, like muted. Because normally a baby monitor is super loud; it's supposed to wake you from a dead sleep. But it was like really quiet, so I thought, okay, maybe the volume's turned down or whatever. I rolled out of bed to go check on the baby. Sure enough, she was sleeping. I walked back into the room. There's still a sound of a baby crying. And I'm like, oh no, it's a ghost baby. There's a ghost baby in here. Well, then, of course, I Googled it, and it was like, no, you're picking up a reception from another baby monitor, you idiot. They can interfere with each other at times. But yeah, every now and again, children are scary.
Yeah, I think a baby would be like the least like problematic ghost, you know, because it doesn't know anything about the world, so it doesn't really know how to haunt you. It just like kind of float crawl around.
Yeah, unless it's like a demon that uses a baby's cry to like lure you in.
I don't think that happens very often. All right,
Yeah,
so
I'm not a
on.
demonologist.
Yeah, neither am I. So moving on, there was some fan nerd geek stuff, FNGS, that I would like to talk about briefly before we get to our main story of the evening. But first things first, I just wanted to really quickly touch on The Flash this week, because we got Mirror Master and Top, who I was really excited for, and unfortunately, well, I'll tell you in a second how I felt about it. And then I kind of want to talk about South Park also. So we're going to have a little bit of TV convo.
Yeah.
So first things first, actually I'll start with South Park. I just honestly am still not sold on the continuing storyline, as opposed to, you know, just the idea of like separate episodes that are completely not linked at all, and the carrying over from last season. I've mentioned this a couple times on the show that I wasn't a huge fan of it, but it really hasn't like drawn me in. I'm not intrigued to know what's going to happen with the whole trolling thing or the election thing, or the only thing about it that's consistently made me laugh and I'm interested in is the fucking member berries. Like, that I legitimately care about. Like, when the member berries had that member berry in their trunk that they were going to beat up, I was intrigued. I was like, holy shit, what are they going to do to him?
Especially because they have that member berry voice,
yeah,
which is just a play on Kyle's Jew cousin voice.
Yeah. But, that's the only thing that I'm excited to find out about but I'd rather just have one whole big Member Berries episode instead of just little tiny nuggets within the whole season of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not into it. Like, I still like it. I still love South Park, but I'm not into it.
I think they're just trying a different direction. This one's even more so completely connected than last season. Last season it was episodic, but with connecting themes. And the one before that was even less.
Right.
So they're getting more and more into this. And the one thing I don't like about it is that the episodes haven't seemed to end on a big funny note because they're, like, cliffhangers,
right?
Whereas South Park usually ends on a huge laugh.
Well,
and then
yeah. The thing I hate is that South Park was known for its being topical and 6-day turnarounds. Like something happens and the next day South Park's doing an episode about it. This loses some of that because they have an ongoing story they're trying to tell.
So they have to try and shove the topical stuff into
the narrative they already have, and I don't like it. I don't think it's being done well. I prefer where they would just come up with these ideas from what happened, like, oh, this week, holy shit, like, this happened, let's just create an episode around it. And that was kind of their mastery, and we're not getting that now.
I do gotta say, I did like how they handled the Donald Trump saying those things with Mr. Garrison, coming out on stage and doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
And then be like, oh, is this where you draw the line? It was alright for me to fuck all the immigrants, right? So it's fine for me to fuck the immigrants to death. Just once we got to this is finger in the butthole. That's over the line.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's good commentary on what has been happening.
Right, and I'm not saying it's bad. I would give the season thus far probably like a 7.
I would concur with that. Maybe a 7.5 for me. I think it's all right. It's just it surely isn't the best season.
Right. Which is disappointing because South Park, now that it's down to only 10 episodes and we have to wait the whole year to get it, we have to wait until September.
Yeah.
It's like we really look forward to South Park and we love it, but at the same time, it's just not what it once was, and I hate to see that happen to South Park. Like, Family Guy, I don't give a shit. The Simpsons, I never gave a shit. But South Park is like, 20 years, we want it to be still as good as it's always been.
Yeah. I think with the culture now, the way it is, with things being like binge watching, they're trying a different angle because binge watch a complete narrative. It's different. I mean, everything has changed since when they got started back in, what was it, 96? Yeah, because this is the 20th year.
I think. Oh yeah.
So things are certainly different now than they were, and you know what? Maybe they're just still trying to get their stride. Maybe it'll be better in the coming seasons, or maybe they'll go back if they get enough fan feedback. Who knows? But we do also have other shows to talk about. The CW shows for sure. I mean, Flash particularly, but mostly I'd touch on. Have you been watching Legends of Tomorrow?
I actually have not been up to date with it.
Okay.
I know they've brought in the Justice Society and stuff. But I didn't get to see this week's episode when they were in Japan.
And the ongoing villain is actually Eobard Thawne, which
I've heard
is cool, and perfect because they are time travelers and he's a time traveling villain.
Right.
I like the fact that they're using him without just making another season of Flash where Flash fights the Reverse Flash again.
And he's such a celebrated villain, and also was well received by fans for the show. I would say that he's the best villain the Flash has had so far, other than Captain Cold.
I mean, he's not Harrison Wells. He's
right.
No,
but I'm saying regardless, that both were taken really well.
And they even brought in Damien Dark in the first episode because it was him back in the 40s. And I was like, oh, I see. They're going to use Legends to kind of villains that get cast off from other shows. They can find a place here because they can move anywhere in time.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's good so long as they don't bring back Vandal Savage.
Yeah. Oh God. I'm so in to see what happens with the Grodd too. But speaking about villains, that's what I want to talk about. Flash was Top and Mirror Master. So Top, I was fine with not doing it like the straight comic book for silly, he actually spins, they made it a girl, and I don't know the New 52 or newest version of Top, so if that was a better incarnation, I didn't know. But, traditionally Top wears a silly costume and literally spins in circles and does kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I like the idea that the name was just kind of a cast-off joke, and her power is just that she makes you super disoriented.
Yeah, that I'm fine with, whatever. But Mirror Master, something about it, him kind of trying to be like a Al Capone kind of mobster. I didn't like that. Mirror Master, I know this wasn't the original Mirror Master, who's like a Scottish criminal guy who has his, and they kind of alluded to that where the Mirror Master in Earth 2. But I just wasn't it felt like they were just using him as like a one-off villain as opposed to trying to build no, this is a member of the Rogues.
And Mirror Master is one of my favorite Flash villains.
Yeah, he's awesome. He should be up there with Captain Cold and Heatwave and Trickster as a core Flash villain, and he just came off as a one-off, and I don't like that.
Yeah. I do like how Flash defeated him using the infinite reflection trick.
I like that too.
Although, it's the setup for him as a villain to begin with, I was like, it seems like the one thing that they trying to do in Flash is give a sciencey explanation to things, and it's like, how do you explain that there's a mirror dimension? You know what I mean, where everything's backwards?
And that's what that was the one thing that I was also going to say is that Flash normally when they just when Cisco and Caitlin just come up with a science explanation for fucking everything, and they're just like, so because we know that, Cisco, take 10 minutes and you can build something to defeat it.
Yeah.
I'm normally okay with it. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's a show. But this time, when Barry got trapped, I was like, wait a minute, what? When they were I know, if we reduce the temperature, the Barry will be able to phase through it.
And they talk about absolute zero like it's something they can just get to with no problem. They're like, well, what if we make it absolute zero? It's no scientist can ever do that.
Yeah,
right?
I was saying that, and I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And then when, just him, it's frozen, so he can phase out of it. It's supposed to be another dimension, so I didn't get it. I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all.
And then Caitlin comes over and frosts the glass, and Barry's not like, hey, Caitlin, what are you doing over
she
there?
she was on the side of the mirror, so she was touching this. Now that part actually totally made sense to me. I was like, yeah, if you're over here jacking off, there's Barry can't see.
And then at the end of the episode, for whatever reason, her lips turned black.
Well, no, they weren't. No, they started turning
blue. Or
turned
blue. Sorry,
she's starting to show her killer frost.
Right.
Which I actually was intrigued by that, and that part I was cool. I think it's cool to see her starting to turn into the actual killer frost in this world. Now I'm confused whether that is because of Flashpoint or if she's actually the Earth 2 Caitlin, or I don't know.
I think it's because of Flashpoint.
That would make the most sense.
Which then the question becomes, is she going to be Killer Frost as a villain?
Right.
Or is she going to get all the same powers but choose the side of the Angels?
Well, Killer Frost has helped the Justice League and stuff before. She has been heroic in some context, so it's not totally out of character if they make her help Barry. And obviously Earth 1 Caitlin, if that is who it is, has really no malice in her heart at all. She's lost a lot. She lost Ronnie and everything, but she never has been evil in any capacity. We've seen moments of evil in Barry when he was infused with anger. When he got whammied when he fought Oliver. We've seen Cisco, be really cold to Barry and kind of what could potentially lead down the road.
Yeah.
And obviously Harrison Wells, but never any of that from Caitlin.
Yeah. What did you think of the notion that they're like, well, we got to find ourselves a new Harrison Wells?
I thought that was really lazy.
That was really lazy.
I think that's so lazy. I mean, there's so many good actors out there in the world looking for work.
Yeah, like, if you chose to kill off that character, then get someone else to fill the same role, but a different part. We don't need Harrison Wells.
And the thing is, I don't know if they're doing that because, well, the thing is you think about it, you'd be like, well, Tom Cavanaugh, obviously, his contract is for the whole season because they're just... But why change his character? Just keep Earth 2 Harry.
And why make him, like goofy?
Yeah.
Yeah, they went with, a douchebag fedora wearing
hipster
Harrison Wells.
Harry. Now, the preview for next week's episode, I guess there's going to be something going on there about not trusting him or something. So we don't know. Maybe there's more to it. We're not, obviously, the Flash writers, so we don't know. That being said... Yeah, I don't know. It was weird. I was like, why do that? Just, Harrison, stay. Just stay. You and Jesse just stay.
Yeah. We just set up that Jessie Quick is in this universe.
Which I did like Jessie Quick.
Yeah.
I do like her a lot. I like her costume. I still don't see why there had to be a romance with anybody, but her and Wally, it's sweet.
For filler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To fill time.
Yeah. But dare to defy. But yeah, I don't know. All in all, this episode I felt was probably the weakest though so far.
Yeah.
I love the Flash still and want to see good things going forward.
This one will be ultimately pretty forgettable.
Yeah. My lows were definitely Mirror Master and Top just being kind of one-offs and hipster hair.
Hipster hair.
But
yeah, we're totally on the same page with that.
Jesse Quick, cool. Barry really taking his leadership mentor role, I liked, and I'm excited to see what happens with Killer Frost.
Okay. We already talked about Legends of Tomorrow. You want to talk about Supergirl?
Go ahead.
So, in Supergirl this week, we figured out that the person who came in the pod at the end of last season is not Superboy, although I guess they could bill him as Superboy, whatever. He's from a planet called Daxam, which is a sister planet to Krypton, and both of which were destroyed by the same kind of event. It turns out he's alright. He's not a total dickbag, and Kara had to learn to not be racist, because she was super racist against him because he was from this planet Daxam. She just assumed that automatically made him a bad person.
Right.
So she learned that racism is bad.
Yeah.
And it turns out that there's a random alien bar, which seems kind of thrown in there, but whatever.
Right. Well, I know that they're building toward that when aliens become an issue in the other CW shows, that's when Barry's going to be like, hey, I know a girl.
Yeah.
And they're going to hop over and get Supergirl to help. But I'm wondering if any other Supergirl characters would join that. And now they have, it's Mon-El, well, ultimately from Daxam, so Lar Gland or whatever his real name is, right?
Yeah,
he
mentions Mon-El. Now,
Mon-El is he's...
I'm not familiar with the character.
He's Daxam's Superman, basically.
Okay.
He has basically all the same powers as Superman, just from another planet.
Is he related?
No.
With the L name?
No. That's just, he takes that moniker, but they're not related.
Yeah, he does at the end of the episode say, I'm Mon-El.
Yeah, that's the character.
Okay. And what's the name of the character?
Lar Gand is his actual name.
Lar Gand.
Something like that.
I feel like they're going to give him a easier to say name than that.
Well, Mon-El, I'll just call him that probably.
Maybe.
But fans like Mon-El, and him and Superman get along really well when they do encounter each other.
He does. He seems alright. He just seems like a bit more of a bad boy Superman.
And I think I mentioned when we talked about that earlier in the show that I thought that's who it was going to be.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
now that you mention it, the name sounds familiar.
I thought Mon-El was probably who it would be.
So at the end of the episode, we got McGann. So Miss Martian is now going to be part of the universe, which is cool. Although she's not like a younger version like we had on Young Justice.
Right.
She's just an adult.
Right. Well, she's supposed to be Martian Manhunter's niece, so that in terms of age could be whatever.
But yeah, it was interesting, and the preview shows that the next episode's going to be like the underground basement fight sort of thing.
Which is straight out of Justice League has done that multiple times.
Hell, they even did it in the cartoon series.
That's what I'm saying. Like Justice League the cartoon. Did that multiple times.
I remember it was one with Black Canary.
Yeah, Justice League Ultimate Unlimited. I mean, had the whole female version of the Fight Club.
That was a meta-human fight club. This one is alien exclusive.
Right.
Although in this world, all the bad guys seem to be aliens.
Which is
humans with tech.
Yeah. Which, I mean, realistically is, if we ever in real life encounter people with superpowers, it'll most likely be that. Like, people with technology or aliens.
You don't think it'll be X-Men? You don't think we're going to evolve?
Alright, so I think it's about time that we talk about our Geek of the Week Halloween edition.
Geek of the Week.
Spooky ghost. Oh, there's a ghost beside you.
And he's a geek.
No, chicka chicka. So our Geek of the Week this week, if you haven't heard, there's been an ongoing spooky clown problem.
A clown pandemic.
Yeah, pandemic, literally. So people have been basically dressing up as clowns and trolling, but it's gone to the and I think it started just probably a prank, but it's gotten to the point now where people are legitimately committing crimes dressed as clowns. So the Joker has literally infected real life.
Yeah.
But speaking about internationally, our Geek of the Week is actually the Interior Minister of Germany.
Okay.
Because he, for this Halloween, this past week, on Friday, he made an announcement to the entire nation that they are going to have a zero-tolerance clown policy for Halloween. We will not put up with clowning around. Basically, he's saying, no clowning around this Halloween.
Hang on, now Germany has set a pretty bad precedent in the past of saying a group of people are not allowed to do what they want to do.
Yeah, and you know what? But I think it's funny. His quote was that this has nothing to do with harmless Halloween activities. Like, this is becoming, saying basically, like, this has become much more, significant when we're having actual, like, aggravated assaults and robberies and stuff.
Yeah, and terroristic threats.
Yeah, so no clowns, which I think the reason why he's the Geek of the Week is because I think that's a sentiment that most people have had probably for like the past 50 years. Like, no more clowns.
Well, realistically, they're not good. Chlorophobia, whatever the fear of clowns has been on the rise since Stephen King's It came out.
Yeah, and John Wayne Gacy, raped boys.
Yeah, a lot of things have made the sentiment towards clowns change, which is funny because now there is a hashtag Clown Lives Matter movement attempt, and they're doing like a protest sort of thing, and these are actual like working like birthday clowns,
right?
And they're like, hey, our numbers have been decreasing because people are afraid of us. We're just trying to make kids laugh,
right?
Like that's all we want to do.
But you know what? I'm gonna say that as much as I respect the Clown Lives Matter movement and what they stand,
that's a god awful name,
and what they stand for,
that's appropriation.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to side with the Germany Interior Minister here. I think that we would be fine. Clowns don't, add to the breadth of culture in the world in any capacity, I don't think. You can make kids laugh not being a clown. Trust me, we do it every single day.
Now, what if every cop dressed up like a clown so that not only criminals are clowns, but also cops are clowns?
I feel like I saw that had to be done on like Looney Tunes. Right? They had like a clown cop right here. Yeah. I don't know. That maybe would be cool. Maybe if everybody was a clown, then we would not be so clownophobic.
First of all, congratulations to you.
Yeah.
Do you have the name? Did we say his name?
I can't. Yeah. So I can't really.
The internal minister of Germany.
My pronunciation here is going to be horrible, but it's Thomas de Maizière, I think. I mean, obviously, I'm messing that up. But yeah. So congratulations, sir, and thank you for taking the first step.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, cleaning up the clown problem.
Yeah. Now, I was saying or reading earlier.
Happy Halloween.
Someone posted something funny online, which a lot of you may have seen. I had to share it because they pointed out the fact that, hey, so we have crazy clowns committing crimes like throughout the country.
I think you mentioned this about We Need Batman.
And, well, yeah, and then the fact that there is a billionaire running for office who's got a serious problem with aliens.
Yeah,
Clearly we need the Justice League.
More than anything. Maybe this is all like a really great viral marketing for Justice League next year.
For Justice
Like, dude,
League.
everybody's hated on Zack Snyder after BVS. You know what? He was like, fuck you, I'm going to change the world. Literally.
Hey, and you know what? Lex Luthor also had red hair.
Yes, he
So
did.
if Donald Trump comes out next week with a shaved head, like, all bets are off. He is Lex Luthor.
I have been saying it since before, during the early primaries when Trump announced his candidacy. Like, he's fucking Lex Luthor, 100%. But yeah. So anyway, our main story tonight, and going along with our Halloween theme, spooky.
There's blood.
Oh no.
Blood is so scary.
We started off the show by talking about, spooky things that happen to us in our lives. Now, in taking a Halloween-y turn, we're going to discuss great spooky movies, TV shows, all video games, all that sort of thing, to kind of just give you guys our Halloween suggestions. If you want to get a little good scare, this is what you should check out.
Try these things out.
So, to start off, I would recommend, for me, a video game that I played that I would say genuinely was the first time I was ever, really, scared in a game. There are two I'm going to mention, but the first is Resident Evil 4, which is all the Resident Evil games have a good spooky element, but 4, even though that was the first one to turn the game into a more action-adventure style, definitely still had enough scary moments and spookiness to get a good leave the lights on moment.
Yeah.
And in particular, there's this one scene where an enemy you encounter multiple times in the game, but the first time you ever encounter them is these chainsaw guys, and they're just kind of standing there, like, hobbling around, like, mumbling to themselves. But the second that you, take a footstep and they hear you and they turn around at you, they just lift up their chainsaw and start chasing you, and these assholes will chase you, forever.
And they're damn near impossible to kill.
Almost impossible to kill. So you have to be if you see one, you just sneak around it. But I remember being, when the game first came out on GameCube, and then again on PS2, and now you can get it on PlayStation Store or whatever. When every single time I'd see one of those, I would just, my heart would start pounding. Like, what am I going to do? Oh no, they're going to get me. And genuinely be like, if it did see you and it's chasing you, just try and find the nearest room to go hide in. Yeah. And then they saw through the doors.
Because, there's always this old thing in video games that, as long as you leave the room that you're in, the bad guys can't chase you into that room. So when they cut through the door, it's like, oh, yeah, there is no God.
And I think that was the part that was so, terrifying, was that I genuinely thought, if I go into this house, it's going to, it'll be like a load screen and we'll be good. I'll be away from it. I'm going to be safe. Because that's what we had learned at that point in video games, like you said. But no, it was the second I saw the door getting hacked, I was like, holy shit, what do I do? I don't have any gun, I don't have any gun that can kill this thing. And of course, and the fact that was the first time I also had ever seen a legitimate decapitation in a video game, because that dude saws your head right off.
Oh yeah,
and it is not PG by any sense of the imagination. Yeah, it was literally and figuratively scarring. I loved it.
Yeah, another game that is really kind of bending the rules of or bent the rules of scary video game and survival horror is Alien Isolation.
Okay, I've never played that.
The thing about Alien Isolation is that it gives you the feel of the original Alien. There's an alien, you're on this ship, you have to get away.
Right, not aliens.
Yeah.
Alien.
You are the daughter of Ripley, in the time period in which Ripley's frozen between Alien and Aliens. And you're basically trying to find your mom. But the same kind of thing happens to her that happened to Ripley in the first one. Alien on the ship. And there's other things. The robots all go haywire, the androids, and they're trying to kill you. But the thing about the game itself is that the mechanic of the alien is that it is all ever present. It could just show up at any time and kill you. If you're hiding, if you try to hide from it, and you stay in the same place for too long, it will find you, even if you're in a hiding place. And if you're playing and you have the Xbox Kinect, and you have the right setting on, if you make too much noise in your house, it picks it up on the speaker and it'll find you.
That is awesome.
So you can't gasp, you can't scream.
Yeah, that's
you
awesome.
have to breathe quietly and keep everything turned
Right.
off. And so, like, for instance, using the motion tracker, that's the only way that you can keep track of, like, if it's nearby. The thing beeps, and you have to look down at it, you know what I mean? So if it beeps and it's like, oh shit, it's right there, it instantly knows where you are.
Right.
So the whole idea of the game is just survive. You can't kill it.
Mm-hmm.
All you can do is slow it down by luring it to where one of the androids are so that it has something to fight while you run away.
Sure. Now this is Xbox One?
Xbox 360,
360.
and PS3.
Gotcha. It's
I
awesome,
don't know if they ported it to the Xbox One and the PS4.
Yeah, because I know for Resident Evil 4 you can play it now still. That's one we don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I might be wrong about that. There's maybe someone yelling.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's terrifying.
Right.
And the whole thing is first-person perspective as well. So it might be standing right behind you, and whereas we're a third-person game, you can see around the character.
Right.
You're seeing right out of their eyes. I would love to see them redo this now that the VR technology is coming out, and it just give people heart attacks.
Right. So speaking about first person, another one I wanted to mention, a video game before maybe we switch gears to another medium, was, for me, I know there's a newest version of this game, but I haven't played the newest version. But for me, Doom 3.
Oh, yeah.
Which was original Xbox and PlayStation 2, that era. But Doom 3, Doom 1 and 2 were both action shooting games.
Well, and Doom 3 is as well, but the horror elements to it
were off the charts. Like, legitimately, from the beginning of that game, when you're still kind of in the real, like, you're on Mars.
Yeah.
Like, it was okay, like, this is going to be cool, action-adventure sort of game, but the second you start going into hell, like, the breach is open to hell, it is terrifying. Like, babies twisting their heads around and crawling towards you, the little ones on the ground and on the ceiling, like, I legitimately had many, many moments of, like, the jump scare,
Yeah.
Probably at least once per time playing that game, minimum.
The three that I can think of, there are three particular moments that stand out to me. Was you look down into, there were those little, like, cubby holes.
Yeah.
Where there would sometimes be, like, supplies or something, and you look down into one, and, like, a severed arm comes shooting out past you. That was freaky.
Right.
Another moment is all the stairs, there's, like, a wall behind them. So when you go up the stairs, you can't see anything behind it because, well, there's just a wall behind it. But there's one where you turn to go up the stairs, and a light turns on, and it turns out it was a hallway behind the stairs. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And the light turns on right behind one of the demons, and it ducks away down another corridor.
Yeah.
And then you never run it, like, that demon doesn't show up in that room. It was just to remind you that they're ever present.
Yeah.
And then the final one, I don't know if you remember going down a hallway where there were two lights, and underneath one of the lights, like, a girl appears, and you just waste all your ammo shooting at this girl. And it's just a ghost.
To mess with you.
And you keep walking, and you're like, oh, man, I wasted all that ammunition. And it appears under the other light, too.
Yeah. The other one for me was, I don't know if you remember, and this is pretty early on in the game, when you're walking down one hallway, and just for no reason, just a dead body, like, just falls from the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I literally, like, scream, because it just falls down. And there's no point to it. Nothing, there's no enemy up there or nothing. It's just to fuck with you. And I think that was part of that game that was so great.
Yeah. Another moment I remember was walking into a room, and a room that was relatively dark, and then all of a sudden just a bunch of, like, pentagrams and symbols appeared
the lights like flicker, and then it was all, like,
all over the walls, and you heard, like, laughter, like the devil's laughter.
Yeah.
Dude, that game fucked with your head.
Doom was great. It was really, really well done.
Absolutely.
I have never played the new one, but I hope it's as good.
Yeah, I haven't checked out the new one yet. But that one for sure was very spooky.
Yeah, so how about some spooky Halloween movie suggestions? Whoa, oh, Dracula.
Okay. So one movie that
we really need to cut that shit out.
Boo! I'm wearing a ghost costume.
Yeah, a spooky ghost.
A spooky ghost. All right. So one movie that really freaked me out, not at the time. At the time I was like, this isn't really that scary. But afterwards, for weeks, was the original Paranormal Activity.
Okay.
That movie...
That's great. Now, Paranormal 1 is very good.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the other ones. Because I didn't want to ruin the franchise for myself.
They get progressively worse, which isn't surprising.
I assumed that they would be.
And also, they try to expand the mythology, and I didn't like it. I would like if they were just all unrelated.
I would have liked if it was just one Great movie.
Paranormal 3 was actually pretty good too.
Okay.
So I'll give it that.
Because one trope that comes up a lot in horror films is if you try to explain Jason or Michael Myers or whatever, right, it makes them less terrifying, right, because you understand them.
Right.
The fear of the unknown is part of the terror. And I'm
gonna argue that a little explanation is okay for my first movie that I'm gonna talk about. But please continue.
All right. Like, admittedly, throughout the movie, you don't see the monster. You know what I mean? No. And that's one of the things that's the kind of like Jaws, it's kind of Hitchcock. Like Alien. You know what I mean? It's the idea that what you can't see, the unknown, is scarier than the known.
Right.
Now, as a friend of mine, another guy named Josh, a friend of mine pointed out once, that throughout the majority of the movie, the demon isn't really terrifying. It's just like a rowdy teenager. Yeah. He's just stomping around, slamming doors, flicking lights on and off. It's once he starts like the sexual assault, touching women without consent. Then he starts trumping around. That's when it becomes terrifying. And like the scene where they throw the flower on the ground and the footsteps appear, and they even make the comment, because I thought it while watching the movie, like, well, he's a spirit, right? Like, what? But they make the comment like, he didn't have to make those footprints. He did that just to fuck with us. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, that's solid. That's solid reasoning. Yeah. So Paranormal Activity at the time wasn't super scary, but afterwards, every time a light was on in a room and I didn't remember turning it on, I'm gonna die.
Paranormal.
Every time I hear, now at the time I was living in a townhouse, and I hear my next door neighbor close a door,
paranormal.
I'm about to die.
Yeah.
So someone's gonna stand over me all night long, just swaying back and forth.
Anytime anybody shuts a cabinet in this house, paranormal.
And sure enough, one time I left my house, I got in my car, I looked up and I noticed that the light in my bedroom was on, and I was sure that I had turned off all the lights.
Paranormal.
I left it on because I was not going back in that house.
So for me, one of the there's some older movies that I'll just mention kind of rapid fire later. But one of the first movies that really freaked me out when it came out, and I think it's 2005, is the first Ring. The original Ring. Actually, legitimately, I found very creepy. The first Grudge, not so much. Ring 2...
Oh, the Grudge is funny.
Yeah, Ring 2, definitely not. The fact that they're making a new Ring, no way.
They are?
Yeah, we talked about this on the show.
Did we?
Yeah, they're making rings, plural.
Jesus
they're pulling the alien.
Christ. In case she fell into two wells.
Yeah, but that was what I was going to mention about explaining and the character. Samara, I thought was creepier when they gave the explanation, because at first you're like, oh, this is a little girl, they're going to set her spirit free, and that's good when they explain it. You're like, oh, that was horrible, I can understand why her spirit's haunting. But then you find out that she's also just fucking evil. At the very end, you find out, no, she's just evil. They're not trying to save this cute little girl. But that movie, with the entire, component of technology, and, it's outdated now with VHS tapes, but...
It was almost outdated when it came out.
That's true. But the entire, static and everything, legitimately, after watching the movie, and for a good long time after that, still, every time I'd hear, a static TV,
white noise.
Yeah, it would freak me out.
And admittedly, the first time she crawls out of the TV
it's terrifying.
Was a very scary moment in that movie.
I don't know why that idiot just sat and watched her, climb out to get him.
Well, they say there's fight or flight, but there's also freeze.
Yeah.
And maybe out of sheer panic, they're just frozen to the spot.
I'm gonna guess that had to be what happened. But the first time I ever saw The Ring actually was at a sleepover with two friends in, I want to say 8th grade or 7th grade. But 8th grade was a really scary year for me. It was either 7th grade.
Your body was changing. Yeah. The world became full of demons.
So you know what? Then it had to have been 8th grade, and the movie had to come out in 2004, I think, maybe.
I don't remember.
Or maybe earlier, I don't know. But I just know that when I saw the movie, we had stayed up late watching it, and afterward, I slept on the couch downstairs, and they were upstairs, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I swear to God, the TV, I woke up, and it was static, and I knew I had turned it off before I went to bed, so I was totally freaked out. Well, lo and behold, I found out the next morning that it was them, the two. They came downstairs when I was asleep and did it to freak me out. But at the time, that night, I unplugged the TV from the wall. I went up and unplugged it from the wall. And was like, no, fuck this, and went back to bed. But I was definitely spooked out of my mind.
Now, a movie that I don't even remember if I've ever seen or not, but if I did, it wasn't enough to impact me. Was the Blair Witch Project, the original one?
Yeah.
But this is a kind of a funny anecdote that has to do similar with, you just reminded me when someone was messing with you. My wife and her little brother saw it, but at the time he was only like 8 or 9. You know what I mean? He was very young, and it terrified him, right? And so her and her sister decided they were going to play a prank on him. When he was eating dinner or whatever, he wasn't in his bedroom, they just took all the pages out of like a notebook and drew the stick man from the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, that's mean.
And just pasted it up all over his room, like taped it up everywhere.
Right.
And so he comes into his room, screams, panic. And, of course, the parents are like, take it all down. You shouldn't have done this, whatever. So they take them all down, but they left one intentionally on the back side of the door. So he's like, get out of my room, and slams the door, looking right at him. So he screams again, they take it down, they say, all right, that's enough. Turns out they had forgotten one. Like, they left the one on the door intentionally. They completely forgot the other one, and this is the worst one. He had bunk beds, and they had put one up on he slept on the bottom bunk, and they put it up on the underside, so he lays down in bed to go to sleep, looks up, it's staring down at him.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So, he didn't sleep well that night at all.
Poor kid.
And they got in a lot of trouble. Although now, all these years later, if you ask their mom, she's like, I mean, that was a pretty good prank.
No, that's hilarious. Blair Witch Project, by the way, is a very good movie for those who have seen it. Another film that's a very less known, but I've recommended to a lot of people, is called Session 9.
Oh, yeah.
Great movie, super spooky and creepy because you're uncertain. It's ambiguous if the movie is about some demon or something along those lines, or if it's just purely psychological. Wait, what the hell is that bounding?
It's my kid.
Oh, I was going to say, is that the ghost?
Is that the ghost?
Is that the ghost in the studio?
That was absolutely not planned, by the way.
At all.
That's just
Halloween.
Ooh, spooky.
But anyway, back to Session 9. So the film is about a asbestos cleaning crew that are cleaning out a psychological institution that's been shut down for a very long time. It's filmed on location at an actual shut down insane asylum.
Yeah.
Really,
it's very Arkham.
It is terrifying. The movie really kind of explores the psychological and like the inner demons of all the characters. It's a really good character-driven movie. And yeah, genuinely very, very spooky and creepy.
That's a movie I'm really glad you introduced me to because I've watched it so many times.
Yeah, and when the movie ends, it's one of those films that like it ends with you with just like a pan and over shot of the institution and this creepy voice talking, and like the movie just ends and you are really like your skin crawls. At the end of it.
The whole time you can't figure out if there's a ghost or a monster or if it's a crazy person or what is causing all these bad things to happen.
Right. And that's like we said, not knowing is the worst part.
Yeah. And you know what? We spoil everything, but for sake of it, because it's such a good movie and so like not well known, go watch it.
Yeah.
Watch Session 9 for Halloween this
I don't
year.
know if they have it on Netflix, but you can definitely find it on the internet, obviously.
Yeah, go to your local Blockbuster and rent it.
Yeah. Ooh. If you find it, definitely. Session 9's great. I would give it probably like a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I absolutely love that movie.
And the soundtrack, that movie's soundtrack is genuinely very well done and very, like, the ambiance and creepiness of it's great.
Speaking of soundtracks, one thing that I have learned about recently, it's an interesting little science fact. Have you heard of infrasound?
No.
Okay, infrasound is a tone that we cannot hear. It's too low.
I mean, I was going to guess that, like infrared.
Yeah. It's too low for our ears to pick up, but our brains do perceive it. And a lot of scientists think that the majority of cases of like ghost stories and whatnot is actually because of infrasound, because the tone causes sensations of fear and panic. It triggers that part of your brain. And it can actually vibrate your eyeballs so that you can see stuff out of the corner of your eyes, like movement or shadows or whatever. So a lot of times they say that, in a house that is particularly haunted, quote unquote, it might just be that a fan or a pipe is making a sound
that's messing with
you. Which the interesting thing about that is that I wonder if in horror movies they intentionally include during like the infrasound during some of the moments to increase the sense of panic. If not, they certainly should.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
Actually, there's a YouTube video you can go to right now that is just an hour-long infrasound tone. It sounds like nothing. Like you press play and you just watch the little meter go. But if you just sit there, you'll feel like you're being haunted. It naturally makes your whole body chill and like your spine tingle. It's really creepy because you don't hear anything, but all of a sudden you feel like there's something in the room with you.
That is very spooky.
Do that for Halloween too. Turn off all the lights and listen to the infrasound. Right. It'll freak the shit out of you.
So the final
so
the final movie I want to talk about, the most contemporary movie that I think is, you know, good in its creepiness, but also just generally a great movie, is The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, which James Wan, so the soon to be, well, he's currently the director of Aquaman. The movies are great. They tell the story of Ed and Lorraine Warren, they're demonologists and paranormal investigators, and these are based on like true cases they had of demonic possession or whatever. The movies are really good. The acting's really well done. They're genuinely spooky. I talked about Conjuring 2 a little bit earlier in the show because we met the one guy who was in the movie at the one con. So if you want to hear my review for Conjuring 2, it's in a previous episode. But yeah, they're both really good. Great Halloween movies, very scary. The music in them really does a good job, like you're saying, with sound tones of making you tense. Also, I'm a big fan of the, like, you know, demonic possession kind of supernatural component when it comes to horror compared to just like the monster movie. Yeah. And these ones do that very well. Very homage to Exorcisty.
Exorcisty. That's my favorite movie.
Yeah.
Not so much Exorcisty 2.
Exorcisty 2 is...
And Exorcisters Act was not very good.
No.
That's just Ghost, but if you watch it knowing that Whoopi Goldberg is about to be possessed from that aspect, that's Exorcisters Act.
Exorcisters Act.
Now, I think that there are also some other... obviously, we've talked about video games, talked about movies. One thing that is out right now, and it's super big, and I would be remiss to not bring it up, is Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
Stranger Things, you've seen Stranger Things?
Yeah, of course, great.
Stranger Things is fantastic.
10 out of 10.
And it's so well written, so well performed.
Right there, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
It's great.
And god damn it if it's not scary.
It is creepy.
It is very creepy.
Yeah.
Again, it's this idea of more often than not seeing the monster, just seeing the effects of the monster, it moving things, so the wall moving, the lights. Yeah. When you have to follow the lights.
And Stranger Things does a great job of taking inspiration from like Stephen King and like Steven Spielberg movies also. So it kind of creates that, like, you know, retro 80s vibe, but also that creepy retro like 80s horror movies thing going on in every episode, which is awesome.
Yeah, but then also bringing it into like a contemporary, like the musical score is not like a big John Williams soundtrack. It's meant to really put you in the 80s.
It's very minimalist.
Yeah, it's supposed to make you feel less like you're watching a show that's taking place in the 80s and like putting you there.
Yeah, and so basically, if you haven't seen the show yet, the plot just covers this group of like middle school friends who their one friend goes missing, and so they basically go searching for him. Meanwhile, the whole town kind of is trying to help find this kid, and a lot of strange things start happening around the town.
And even stranger things.
And then stranger things. But it is very creepy and a fantastic show.
Yeah, really, really well done.
And season 2 is coming out next year, so you have a chance. The whole thing's on Netflix.
Yeah, super excited to see what they come up with for season 2 as well.
So last but not least, I mentioned I'm going to rattle off my lightning round Halloween creepy movie suggestions. If you have any in mind, you can also throw them in there.
Yeah, we can.
So, Rosemary's Baby from the 60s. It's about her being possessed with the Antichrist, being pregnant with the Antichrist. Great movie, super creepy.
The original Exorcist. One of the greatest horror movie sound tracks and like theme songs of all time, let alone a creepy movie in its own right.
Right. The original Wicker Man, very good. Oh, yeah. Not the Nicolas Cage version.
No,
that thing's
that one's a joke.
That one is literally a joke. The bees.
The bees.
Why they have to be bees? Yeah.
Halloween
original.
Either the original one or the Rob Zombie remake was also very good.
Never seen the Rob Zombie.
The Rob Zombie one's really good. That one is I mean, Rob Zombie has his own
Right.
sense of terror.
Yeah, true. The original Silent Hill movie I find very creepy.
Oh, we didn't mention Silent Hill as a video game.
It's also absolutely terrifying.
You play any of the Silent Hill
So
games and pee out your butt, you'll be so scared.
They're definitely... Silent Hill, the original, is definitely more scary than Resident Evil.
Well, and the thing about Silent Hill, the original, that made it so terrifying is that because the game didn't have the ability to generate large open spaces, they just, instead of letting it just kind of end at blank walls, they just put fog.
Yeah.
And that made it so much scarier.
Right.
It was brilliant usage of bad technology.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, they knew what they were doing the entire time.
But yeah, Silent Hill, the movie.
Silent Hill, the movie, the first movie, I think they made a sequel, but don't ever watch the sequel.
Don't bother. Nightmare on Elm Street. The original Nightmare on Elm Street.
The original of any of those. The original Scream, the original...
Friday the 13th. Any of the original slasher films.
They're really good.
Another one that I think is really creepy, even knowing the twist in it, is The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, The Sixth Sense.
It's got a lot of suspense and spookiness.
And if you're into like the more grotesque, like, like murder slasher sort of thing, I mean, Saw, the originals.
The first one's really good.
The first Saw, the Hills Have Eyes, which we talked about in the previous episode. It's pretty creepy.
Gortacular.
The Purge isn't horrible. Purge 1.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those.
The Purge 1 actually wasn't horrible. And Hostel. That movie also.
Oh, ugh. If you're really into murder porn.
Yeah, murder porn all out the wall. Yes, I don't know.
And and then of course there's some of the greatest, like the Day of the Dead. The original George Romero.
Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, all of the.
Actually, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead is
not so bad.
Is also pretty good.
Yeah. I'll give you that one. 28 Days Later.
Yeah,
is another good one. Yeah. Not so much the sequel.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really good spooky stuff out to see.
So if you don't, and obviously it would take more than one Halloween to watch all of them and play all of the games and all that kind of stuff. But you have lots of suggestions now for this Halloween and upcoming Halloweens. But I think that about wraps up the show, doesn't it?
I believe it does. Where can they find us?
So, you can come trick or treat for the Strong and the Geek on Facebook, Twitter, @Strong and Geek. You can follow me personally @RamresForPrez, or you can follow him personally
@TheBenRamirez.
Listen to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Comment. If you'd like to have some suggestions for the show, feel free to let us know. If you ever want to be on the show, we've had some guests, also let us know. And if you want to tell us that you don't like the show, well...
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
I'm trying to get better at it. That's okay, too. So, join us next week when we'll be talking about another exciting geek news and all things strong.
And all things geek.
Stay classy, Halloween Town. Don't know the lyrics to this song. Oh.
Boo, welcome to the scary, haunted post-credit scene.
I'm Frankenbean.
Frankenbean and I, Count Dracula, have come to give you spooky after-credits content.
This trick or treat, I eat cookie.
God.
And candy.